Thank you. We are now live streaming. Can I welcome everybody to this evening's Cabinet meeting? We have a number of items on the agenda today. The first item is to explain the meeting protocol. What will happen is we will deal with those items where we have members of the public wishing to speak or councillors, and I can inform the meeting that actually we have people wishing to speak on every single item, so I am going to keep the agenda in the order it is in. Members of the public, councillors who wish to speak, will have 3 minutes to do so, and then members of the Cabinet, if there are any points of clarification, will make those at the end of those speeches. Can I ask people in the usual manner to assist with the live stream to keep muted when you're not speaking, and only to unmute when I invite you to? That helps with the quality of our film. Can I also advise that mobile phones are switched to silent or turned off, because they have a habit, don't they, of going off at inappropriate times as well. But everyone is warmly welcomed. The first item on the agenda is apologies for absence. Do we have any apologies? I think all of Cabinet are here. Second item is declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest other than those already listed on the papers before us tonight? I'm not seeing any hands, so I take it that there aren't. Next item, item 4, the minutes of the previous meeting. Are they agreed as an accurate record? Is somebody prepared to propose those?
Yes.
I'll propose those, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Phillips proposed those. Somebody second them? I think I heard Councillor Shepherd second those.
Happy to second.
And are they agreed? There's no
Agreed, Chair.
Thank you. Public consultation. We have on item 6, Councillor Kondaka. Item 7, Councillor Smith and Councillor Kondaka. Item 8, Councillor Wilson, Councillor Smith and Councillor Kondaka. Item 9, Councillor Kondaka. Item 10, Councillor Wilson and Councillor Kondaka. Item 11, Michelle Condacor, Councillor Wilson and Councillor Kondaka. Item 12, Michelle Kondaka, Councillor Wilson and Councillor Kondaka. Item 13, Councillor Wilson and Councillor Kondaka. Item 14, Councillor Kondaka. Item 15, Michelle Kondaka, Councillor Wilson and Councillor Kondaka. Item 16, Councillor Condacor. Item 17, Michelle Kondaka, Councillor Wilson and Councillor Kondaka. And item 19, Councillor Keith Kondaka and Councillor Izzy Seckham. And on item 21, Councillor Wilson and Councillor Kondaka. Is that an accurate record? Is there anybody wishing to speak whose name hasn't been read out? Councillor Lloyd. Councillor Lloyd, you're muted.
There we go. Has there been a mistake made? Because I note on item 19 is only Councillor Seckham from the Conservative group that's actually speaking on this issue. Is not Councillor Christopher Wilson being left off for some reason, or is he intending to speak on this issue?
Can I just, for sake of clarity, I've got Councillor Kondaka and Councillor Izzy Seckham. Councillor Wilson, were you intending speaking on this item?
No, thank you, Chair. I intend to listen to what the Cabinet's view is.
Okay, thank you. The next item then is item 6, Next Steps Accommodation Programme. Councillor Watkins, can you introduce the item, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair. At the end of July this year, the government announced a funding initiative called the Next Steps Accommodation Programme. Proposals to be submitted by the 20th of August and funding received to be spent by 31st of March next year. The proposal is detailed in section 4 of the report and notes that the programme is in 2 parts, 1 part capital and 1 part revenue. The first is to provide additional accommodation for former rough sleepers who were accommodated as part of the Everybody In initiative during the first months of the pandemic. A proposal has been submitted for 180,000 to purchase two one-bedroom flats. The second is for revenue funding, firstly to mitigate the subsidy loss incurred for the placement of rough sleepers and totals £96,808. The actual loss is higher, however, we are only able to claim for a maximum of 12 individuals from the 1st of July. Secondly, to recruit a dedicated support worker for the former rough sleepers with the aim to ensure they do not return to the streets and they maintain a long-term settled tenancy. This bid is for funding, and so receipt of it is not a certainty. The recommendations are set out in section 2 of this report. And that's the introduction, Chair.
Thank you very much. We have one speaker on this, Councillor Kondaka.
Thank you very much, Chair. Hope you can hear me okay. And I'll be brief because it's a very big agenda. Massively in support of this. A few things I would like to make clear and a few warnings. One is we really are short of housing officers and various people. So if we're recruiting for new posts, we desperately need more physical people rather than moving people around. So I do hope we try very hard to get some staff in. And also, if we are expanding to do this vital work, I do hope we actually look at maybe taking apprenticeships in or something in the housing to do part of this work, so that actually we can train people up into housing. Because our big problem is when we have like this Everyone In campaign, it ends up taking staff from the day-to-day looking after housing. The second point I wanted to make is about neighbour disputes and generally managing people. A lot of this taking everyone in stuff has been really positive, but obviously there is an element of having to manage it carefully. And so I do hope we are mindful that people who are taken in are expected to have good conduct and not be a nuisance to other people around. And finally, I think we do need to make clear these people are mostly people within the borough. There's a lot of rubbish on social media about the council housing people coming over from here and that. I've spoken and seen lots of the homeless people, and a vast majority of them are actually local people who've hit hard times in various ways. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kondaka. Are there any points of clarification of Councillor Kondaka? I'm not seeing any hands. Councillor Watkins, anything you want to add?
No, thank you, Chair. It was covered all in my introduction. It does say, secondly, to recruit a dedicated support worker. So, yeah, we have actually thought about things. So, yeah, we will be doing it right. Thank you.
And you've moved the recommendations, Councillor Watkins. I'm happy to second those. Any further speakers on this? Everyone, all Cabinet in favour of the recommendations? I'm not seeing anybody dissenting from that, so that is then approved. Moving us on to the next item, item 7, proposal for the allocation of Warwickshire County Council Homelessness Prevention Grant. Again, over to yourself, Councillor Watkins.
Thank you. Right, okay then. So in recent years, there has been an increase in joint working across the county in relation to the prevention of homelessness. Last year, the County Council awarded a one-off amount of 200,000 Stratford-on-Avon for projects aimed at tackling homelessness. This year, the County Council has also offered the same level of funding to the remaining districts and boroughs for projects for the same purpose. The proposal is detailed in section 4 of the report and is for a fixed term 2-year goal to proactively work with private sector landlords and lettings agents. The aim is to prevent homelessness from the private sector and provide support to maintain tenancy. This is particularly relevant for the residents of our borough, given we have the high level of section 21 or no fault notices in private sector. These are anticipated to increase as the economic impact of the pandemic rises and tenants unable to pay market rent levels. The recommendations are at section 2 of this report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Watkins. I do have 2 speakers on this. First of all, can I invite Councillor Richard Smith?
Thank you, Chair. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, fine, thank you.
Perfect. I'm really supportive of this. This 200k from Warwick County Council is really important and extremely welcome. The positive action early in the pandemic, suspending Section 21 evictions, has temporarily helped thousands of people stay in their homes. Unfortunately, as this suspension is lifted and the wider impacts of the pandemic are increasingly felt, the council's right to expect excuse me, a surge in homelessness, and it's prudent to invest this 200,000 from Warwick County Council to increase capacity in the housing team to cope with the potential influx of cases. NBBC's housing department work extremely hard to keep roofs over the heads of some of our most vulnerable residents and are often working at full capacity. So these 2 extra liaison assistant roles are much needed as a matter of urgency to try and help prevent the expected increase in evictions and to keep our vulnerable residents in homes. I'm definitely in favour of this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Are there any points of clarification? Can I thank you for your comments this evening, Councillor Smith, and invite Councillor Kondaka. Councillor Kondaka.
Thank you very much, Chair. Like the previous item, I'm desperate that this is properly staffed without impacting on other stuff. It's very, very important work. And it also ties in with a lot of the empty homes and lots of, we've got 1,700 empty homes in the borough. It makes no sense for landlords to be chucking people out who are in trouble, because who are they then going to get in? We really need this liaison work, and to actually try and encourage us to have more landlords and more people in private rented housing. It is an important segment of our housing market. Really would like this to go ahead as quickly as possible, and also echo the comments of Councillor Smith about this going to be a massive problem going forwards. We know the furlong scheme's about to end in probably about 7-8 weeks, and everything else is all coming crashing down around the same time. And it is so important that we don't waste resources trying to deal with homeless people. We need to be keeping people either in the homes they've got or trying to talk to some other landlords to actually get them in a new home for the times we fail. So really important work. And yet again, I'm sure this will be misinterpreted by some on social media. But yeah, this is actually looking after the people of the borough who, through no fault of their own, find themselves in a right mess. And I really can't say how strongly I support it. It really is very, very important. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Kondaka. Are there any points of clarification of Councillor Kondaka? I'm not seeing any hands. Thank you for your comments to Cabinet today. Before I bring Councillor Watkins back in, just want to say I can agree 100% with the comments made by Councillor Smith and Councillor Kondaka. This is vitally important work, and as furlough and other things come to an end, I think the effects of COVID will be felt more heavily. So we need to really motor on with this work. Councillor Watkins, anything you want to add or need to say at this point?
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to thank Councillor Richard Smith for his kind words to the Housing Department and to our staff, and move to the recommendations, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, I'm quite happy to second that. Is that agreed by Cabinet? No dissent there, so I'm taking that is agreed. Thank you, Cabinet. Moving then to item 8, the redevelopment of Byford Court. Chris, I did say a couple of words then, because it seems at the moment you're doing a lot of talking, but it's over to you, Councillor Watkins.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It's Chris Watkins' show for today. Right, consultation regarding redevelopment of existing dwellings. The new independent living service was launched in May 2017. all this time, 5 schemes were at this time 5 schemes were decommissioned as they were difficult to let, largely due to the bed-sit type accommodation provided. Since May 2017, there has been a significant focus on promoting the benefits of independent living, along with other initiatives such as full regrid decorating, new carpets, installations, and other things that's going on. Despite this, it is clear that the schemes would provide largely bed-sit accommodations are not an attractive proposition to older people. As such, there are increasing numbers of difficult to let bed-sits within the independent living schemes. The financial impact upon the housing revenue account is unsustainable, as it has experienced significant rent loss from the vacant units, and additionally, it has to pay for council tax for those units. Byford Court is particularly hard hit. The accommodation is in the block fronting Byford Road, is comprised of 24 bed-sits and 2 flats. Of these 26 units, only 10 of them are occupied. The options and additional considerations are detailed at section 4 of the report. The proposed consultation option is recommended at section 2 of the report, Chair. And that's my introduction.
Thank you. We do have 3 speakers. Can I invite Councillor Wilson first? Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Chair. It's a very interesting report and a very overdue report in some respects, because these difficult to let bed-sits have been a bane of many of us councillors' existence while we've been on this authority. And trying to find a solution to bringing them back into some meaningful use has proven rather challenging. I think many of us who have served time on overview and scrutiny would agree with that. Certainly Councillor Watkins' time as chair of the old social committee, for example. So it is welcome. I think the difficulty is deciding which is the best option to move forward with. And there are 4 options on the table, one of which is really a non-starter, which is the status quo. That leaves option 2A, 2B, and then 3, demolishing and rebuilding. We have, on our side of the chamber, looked carefully at these options, and we would suggest that option B is probably the most advantageous for the council at this point. Not only does it bring in the most number of units of 18, it also brings in £170,000 worth of revenue, which is the highest of any of the other options, and is would only cost £713,000 to achieve and have a relatively short payback option. We have proven that Spitalfields, which the report says this option is modelled after, is viable, it is doable, and it does work. So I think that would be the best option for residents and actually for the taxpayer of this authority, who will ultimately have to foot the bill of whatever works we decide to do. My only question, and I would like some reassurance from either cabinet members or officers, is that this £71,100 compensation payment, for want of a better phrase, will actually be sufficient and meet all the decanting and movement needs of whoever we have to move out of Byford Court, because many of the residents who have been there could have been there for a significant amount of time, and it will be quite possibly very difficult for them to leave their homes during these circumstances. So I would just like some reassurance that this fee or compensation payment will actually cover all the costs and of whichever residents have to move, and isn't just the statutory minimum, but actually covers the full costs of whoever has to move. That's just my slight concern with this issue, which I'm sure can be addressed by officers or by Councillor Watkins, Chair.
Thank you. I will ask Councillor Watkins or officers to come back after we've heard all the public speakers. Are there any points of clarification of Councillor Wilson? No. Moving on then to Councillor Richard Smith.
Thank you, Chair. Once again, a really important item, because the pressure to provide social housing is clear, so we can't afford to have properties that are void and not fit for purpose, sitting empty. Option 3 on the agenda worries me a little bit. It proposes knocking it all down and starting again, which seems an attractive option on the face of it. However, I have concerns. History tells us that multi-million-pound development projects have a tendency to massively exceed budget, and to spend 1.8 million to achieve a net income of 57,000 a year, giving us a 33-year payback, doesn't seem to make a lot of sense as a financial investment. Of the 2 remaining viable options, B seems to offer a better investment. 170k income for a 713,000 investment, payback of 10 years to create 18 much needed units seems pretty good to me, but I'm not sure if those figures are correct. Maybe I can get an answer on that, because 10 years at 170,000 income equates to 1.7 million against an expenditure of 713,000. So that payback time doesn't seem to equate directly. I don't know if there's something in the figures there, but massive income against a much lower expenditure. So I would have thought payback should have been a bit quicker than 10 years. But otherwise, much needed. Again, very important item. And whichever option we choose, I think we need to get on with it.
Yeah, thank you for your comments, Councillor Smith. I believe the recommendation is clearly one to begin a consultation at this stage in regard, rather than to select an option. I just point that out for clarity at this stage. Are there any points of clarification of Councillor Smith? In that case, then, can I move to Councillor Kondaka?
Thank you very much, Chair. Very interesting, and I was on the social scrutiny panel about 6 or 7 years ago when I was first a councillor, and we had a bedsit that had been unoccupied for 10 years at that point. Just one, but yeah, we get some really difficult to let. And if we're paying £1,000 council tax over 10 years, that's £10,000 paid for us doing nothing. So it's long overdue that we're doing something. It's totally right we consult, because I don't know if the residents would like to move to Redhaddon Court or other things, or if they'd like because consultation is really important when we're dealing with people's homes. But I would actually think we should actually also take it to a scrutiny committee to look over the numbers at the same time, because it's very easy for officers to give us a cabinet report which says this is the best option, this is the best option. But I think we do want a little look at the assumptions behind it, just to make sure we are not taking extra risks or gold plating one option, because there is an attraction in rebuilding in terms of environmental performance, and what's the existing life of the building. And it's most disappointing on all these reports, it says environmental impact none, when clearly refurbishing a building or totally demolishing it and rebuilding it has massive environmental impacts. But obviously not knowing the energy performance and how decrepit it is, and whether rebuilding actually gives you a carbon gain, because actually the fabric it's not insulated, or actually whether you never pay back the cost of demolishing. So I do think we should actually populate the line that says environmental impact with someone actually looking at the carbon costs of running the building. But as I say, I'm very keen that we do something with these buildings. And places like Redhaddon Court in my ward, also bedsits, always have 1 or 2 vacancies. So I think if we do it in a considerate and well-timed way, well planned, we could actually easily find bedsits accommodation for the people in there in other hard-to-let areas. But it is also important to ask the people, do they want to move together? If there's 2 or 3 people who have lived together for the last 20 years, they may actually want to move as 3 bedsits together somewhere. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for your comments, Councillor Kondaka. Any points of clarification? No, not seeing any. Can I thank the 3 speakers for their comments on this report? I do want to reiterate, this is about authorising consultation rather than making decisions in regard to options moving forwards. Councillor Watkins, anything you want to come back on?
No, I was just going to make that point, Chair, that this is about to commence the consultation, and fact, like I've already mentioned in my introduction, is that they are nearly all bed sits there and basically unlettable. So we need to get on with this consultation.
And issues like the sufficiency of compensation payments and financial data would come following that consultation, because we're not at the stage of actually doing that work at the moment. Is that correct, Councillor Watkins?
That's right, Chair. Everything's being looked at and everything will be done right.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Watkins has moved the recommendations. I'm happy to second that. Is everyone in favour? Anybody dissenting from that? Councillor Lloyd.
Just indicating I was in favour, Chair.
Oh, right. Okay, thank you very much. I thought you were wishing to speak.
No.
I take that the Cabinet is happy with that. I'm not seeing anybody dissenting from that, so that then is approved. Moving us on to item 9, which is the Annual Treasury Management Report 2019-20. The CIPFA Code on Treasury Management requires that the Council receives regular reports, including an outturn report. This report details the Treasury Management activity for the 2019-20 financial year for this authority, and includes the prudential and Treasury Management indicators which require presenting to full Council for approval. The tables within sections 5.1 and 5.2 of the report summarise the Council's closing net debt position and the loans held for the General Fund and the Housing Revenue Account as of the 31st of March 2020. The Council invests its cash balances in the Treasury markets across a range of institutions to ensure that risk and return are effectively managed. The 30 million of cash that the Council has invested at the end of March 2020 comes from a range of sources, some ring-fenced for specific purposes, and the table at section 5.3 of the report explains where these cash resources have come from. More detailed information on borrowing and investment performance is at section 8 through to section 10, including a detailed analysis of the performance of the property fund, which has seen a reduction in value due to economic uncertainties and COVID-19. Appendix 1 shows the actual prudential indicators for 2019-20 compared to the original estimates, and all of the indicators are within the expected range with no prudential limits breached. It is also worth noting that all investment maturities were repaid on time and in accordance with contract arrangements. The recommendations are shown at section 2 of the report, and Cabinet are requested to recommend these to Council for approval as required by CIPFA regulations. I have one speaker on this, Councillor Kondaka.
Thank you very much. I always admire what Craig does with our money. It is an incredibly difficult job at a time of low interest rates. And I always worry about the risks the council is pushed into taking to actually get any returns. And one of those examples is obviously the property fund, where we get a very good return in terms of cash flow, but we've always got a massive risk behind the asset value going down. Similarly, when we buy investment properties, and I would have liked us to do a lot less of this risky activity, both in hindsight, but also I've been saying it for years. Things like buying, the Molly's Calf and things, they're very attractive when things are working well, but we really do need to de-risk and think, does the council need to do this to gain a little sliver extra return? So I don't want to be critical of what the council's doing, but I want to just keep repeating capital values, house prices, values of freehold shops, they all can collapse and very likely will. So we do need to be really, really careful and think, is this something the council needs to do? And particularly with the scale of the council, is it a wise thing to do? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for your comments, Councillor Kondarka. Any points of clarification? Not seeing any. I think I want to echo one of the comments that Councillor Kondarka made, and that is that we have an excellent finance team at Nuneaton and Bedworth who always take appropriate account of risk and give us really good information and accurate information. This report, actually, the recommendation is that it would be referred to council to meet those SIPFA regulations. Anyone wish to comment on this report? In that case, then I'm going to move the recommendation as printed. Is there a seconder for that?
Seconded.
Thank you, Councillor Lloyd. Councillor Watkins, did you wish to speak, or was that a hand indicating to second?
No, that was just a second, Chair.
Okay. Can I take it? Is there any dissent from approving the recommendations? In that case, then that report is approved, bringing us on to item 9, the General Fund and Housing Revenue Account Quarterly Budget Monitoring Report. This report updates Cabinet on the forecast outturn position for 2020-2021 as at the end of June 2020. It covers the General Fund, Housing Revenue Account and capital programmes. The COVID-19 pandemic has had a massive impact on the Council's financial position, particularly the General Fund Reserves budget, where the estimated cost to the Council from both lost income and additional expenditure is in the region of 3.6 million. Government funding of 1.5 million has been received so far, with a further 1.3 million expected from the income scheme, although this is still to be confirmed. Therefore, there is still a shortfall of £800,000 based on current forecasts. Further information on the spend pressures the Council is facing this year are given at section 6, and these relate mainly to additional homelessness demand, purchase of PPE and additional payments to our leisure contractor as a result of COVID losses. Section 7 then provides a breakdown of the income pressures that the Council is facing this financial year, and the key income shortfalls are shown in the table at section 7.1. Car park income is the most significant loss the Council is facing, where income is forecast to be almost 1 million below the original budget, although much depends on the speed of economic recovery and people's shopping behaviours. In order to ensure that a balanced budget can still be achieved this financial year, and especially considering the Council's very low reserves position, Section 9 identifies a number of saving options for approval. These include capital programme reductions, use of reserves and in-year revenue savings. There have also been some in-year savings, such as vacancy savings, which will mitigate the COVID pressures and reduce the amount of savings required. The full list of environments for approval is shown at section 9.9, and it should be noted that given the overall level of these, they will require council approval under the budgetary and policy framework. Section 10 of the report updates Cabinet on the capital programme for 2020-2021, and the main changes to highlight here are the additional funding streams for transforming Nuneaton, discussed at section 10.2 and 10.3. It should be noted that the longer term impact of COVID is extremely uncertain, and our latest return to government, completed since the report has been written, showed an increase in COVID pressures of around £100,000, largely due to homelessness demands. The recommendations are printed at section 2 of the report, and I would like to point out to Cabinet that recommendations 3.2 should refer to 9.9 of the report and not 8.9. I do have speakers on this. Firstly, Councillor Wilson. When you're ready, Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, I would like to begin by thanking all of the officers in the Finance Department who have worked exceptionally hard during the COVID situation. I know from experience that they have been working until close to midnight, if not later, in some instances, above and beyond the call of duty to try and get the council moving again from COVID. This is a challenging report. There are no two ways about that. We are, however, better off than some of our other neighbours. I believe Stratford has had an impact of about £9 million in its budget. So we do have to put some things into context, and we have received some government support. I think this report again highlights, and something I've been saying for many years now at Section 7, with the reduction in car parking income, we must, as a council, find some way of reducing our reliance on car parking income. It has proven to be a massive shock to our budgets that when this has happened, and if something happens in the planning in the parking area, it always has a negative impact on our budgets, and we need to find some way of diversifying our income stream. There are still some savings to be made, and I believe the report mentions that we are in the region of about £330,000 after some of the adjustments have been made. But one of the areas I do have of concern is at paragraph 9.8, where we have in-year savings with a reduction in opening hours of the contact centre of £22,000. As someone who works in the public sector myself, I understand the very difficult balancing act of getting them in safely to see someone when they need sources of support, but also finding alternative methods of support too. And we as a council are operating a very rigid policy of appointments only coming in face-to-face at the council house, which is absolutely necessary in COVID times. But then we also have to balance this out with how do people still access council services. Not everyone will have access to email or the internet. And I do have a concern that by reducing the opening hours of the contact centre, we might be denying residents the opportunity to get in touch with our council and access the services they need. That is it might seem a small, insignificant amount of money, £22,000, and something small about reducing an opening hour at the contact centre. But that can have a big difference to those who actually need to access our services during these COVID times. As I say, as someone who has been in all throughout COVID at work, I do not underestimate the challenge that is being faced, and I know how difficult it is as key workers having to face that. But we have to ensure that we still maintain access to services, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Just caught by the bell there right at the end. Are there any points of clarification of Councillor Wilson? Councillor Phillips? Is it a point of clarification, or are you indicating you want to speak later? Councillor Phillips, can you hear?
Yeah, I'll to speak later because I'd like to question what the Conservatives or the opposition party would do, considering they recognise that car parking income is down and car parking income is so important to this council in providing services, etc. The fact that they have called for free car parking when
Councillor Phillips, if it's a question of clarification to Councillor Wilson, I'll take it now, but if it's a statement during the debate, I'll take it later. It sounds as though you're wanting to make a comment afterwards to me.
I'll just leave it there, Chair.
Thank you. I do have another speaker, Councillor Kondaka.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'd like to totally agree with what Councillor Wilson was saying. We really need to look at these savings carefully, and things like the contact centre is the wrong way to trim the cloth. Car parking has been a massive cost burden as well. And one thing we pay on our car parks is business rates. So some of our really poor car parks, you know, the one if you're going by Salvation Army around the back there, it is pitted, it's in a right state. And if we're having less use of car parks, that should be looked at for going for housing or something, because car parking is never going to be as big in the future. And if we have car parks that are actually not profitable, have lots of business rate issues, and really did need £100,000 new surfacings and all these things doing to them, I think our very worst car parks we should consider converting to housing. Also, to make up the costs for the contact centre, short term, I think, why on earth we've got a civic car still? COVID really shows how stupid it is to have a mayor's car and driver. And if people have got the choice of, can we phone the council to report something, or can the mayor have a car? I think we might lose the mayor's car as the first thing we do. Also, there's a lot of other things we need to look at. The Civic Hall really needs to decide, are we taking it into some form of trust, arm's length thing? Are we demolishing it? Are we carrying on with it? But we need to have an idea of what we're doing in Civic Hall, because we can't just keep on as we are. And also the thing we'll talk about later, whether we go unitary or two-tier or whatever, things like the contact centre is clearly the type of thing where a one front door sharing services with the county council and not batting people backwards and forwards would save us money, save the county money, and the residents will get responses. If someone reports a hedge, like I've got one in Ryde Avenue that needs sorting, the borough sends it to the county sends it to the borough. We really need to save money and actually provide better services as part of this crisis. And it could be a good outcome. We actually think how we do things, and can we do things better and more integrated. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for your comments, Councillor Condaka. Any points of clarification? I'm going to bring Neil in a moment, but I don't believe there's any reduction in the ability for people to call in with their concerns. That is not what this budget saving is about. That the last thing I would condone is any reduction in people's ability to contact the council. Councillor Phillips, you did indicate before, and I slightly shut you off. My apologies for that. Councillor Phillips.
No, you're all right, Chair. Move to the next agenda.
I've got Councillor Shepherd wanting to come in. Councillor Shepherd.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's just to reiterate what you've said yourself in terms of the contact centre. You know, this is not about the residents being unable to contact the contact centre, and the contact centre workers through this current crisis have worked extremely hard to ensure residents can get in touch with us. So just wanted to make that point, Chair.
Councillor Shepherd, I'm going to reiterate actually that the contact centre, I think, of recent months has done an absolutely wonderful job. I know you can always get hold of someone, and indeed that your concerns are logged very efficiently and progress made on those. I tend to use, if I do call, I tend to go through our contact centre myself. The recommendations I will move from the chair. Are those seconded?
Seconded, Chair.
And are we all agreeing with those? If there's any dissent, can you indicate? In that case, then those are approved. Thank you. And thank you to our speakers. We move then to item 11, the updated statement on community involvement. And I believe this is Councillor Phillips. When you're ready, Councillor Phillips, can you introduce item 11, please? Just checking if Councillor Phillips is somehow muted. Councillor Phillips, you appear to be muted.
Yeah.
Can you?
Is that better?
Oh, right. Thank you. That's wonderful. Thank you, Councillor
Right, the
Phillips.
updated statement of community involvement. The statement of community involvement is a statutory document that explains how the community and other stakeholders can become involved in the planning process, which is up in the air at the present moment in time. Currently, some of the policies in the statement of community involvement cannot be complied with due to, obviously, government guidance to help combat the spread of coronavirus CD19, such as public exhibitions. Therefore, the statement of community involvement has been updated with just a few paragraphs to address this so that the planning consultations can continue, but in a different form, but remain in accordance with the SCI. To try and reduce the impact of these changes, online engagement methods will be used to their full potential. It should be noted that these changes are only temporary while restrictions relating to COVID-19 are in place. So basically, we need to still keep community involvement and in anything we do, and this is a slight change to it, but I would recommend that the Cabinet, etc., accept the recommendations.
Thank you, Councillor Phillips. Can I invite Michelle Condicor, please?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I just feel that this is rather being a tick box exercise. I understand why it's come forward and that there need to be changes because of COVID and things, but it'd be nice if someone could actually just look at how planning works, because this statement of community involvement doesn't actually really help, people. For example, today, weekly planning list, one of the applications, clicked on it, no documents available, you need to ask for them to be fast tracked. That's just not good enough. If you're putting out a weekly list, all that stuff should be there. The college application, I was looking back on that to see what additional things I needed to put in for the appeal. And there are more than 30 documents on that application, which are simply called planning statement. So I was trying to find the one on air quality, and I had to click on thing. You can only click on one at a time, and it is, it's just not inviting people to take part. If you comment on a planning application, unless you have specifically said in your comments that you might want to speak at the planning committee, you don't even know that the application has gone to is going to planning committee and things. So these are not things, these are little things that could easily be sorted, that would actually make community involvement much better. And on a general thing, in terms of wanting people to be involved, not just in planning, but people to be involved with council and things, don't have a meeting like this with 19 or whatever, even more things on the agenda, because it doesn't encourage people. Most people look at that and think, oh my goodness, that's going to be a meeting that goes on for hours and hours and hours, and they just don't want to, be part of things. On the appendices, where they've got sort of consultation bodies, you've got Primary Care Trust. They haven't existed since 2013. You've got the Homes and Communities Agency, that doesn't exist. Things, whatever, it's Electronic Communications Code Systems Operators. What the hell is that? Someone needs to actually read through this before it's adopted and actually update it and make it live in the real world, and put little things in which would actually help people to actually be involved properly, not just sort of, well, it's okay because we've got this statement of community involvement, when it doesn't actually allow communities to be pretty, to be involved. Pre-planning consultation is just for the benefit of the developers. There's no openness. The first thing most people know is when a planning application, suddenly appears, and then the planning department, oh yeah, we've been talking to Bellway, Daviston, or whatever for months. Public have a right to know.
Can I thank you for your comments, Michelle Kondaka? Thank you very much. Are there any points of clarification? Not seeing any. Councillor Wilson, can I invite you next, please?
Thank you, Chair. Strength of community involvement is always going to be the bane of any councillor's life, especially if they take an interest in planning or sit on the planning committee. However, what I am concerned about is it may seem nice to say there are some temporary COVID restrictions, which there will have to be, but what I don't want us to end up is being in a position where we hide behind COVID as being an excuse for not consulting residents adequately and properly where we can do so. So, for example, at paragraph 1.6 of the report on page 88, it says normally an application will be publicised by a site notice, by serving the notice on adjoining owner or occupier, or by publishing the notice in a local newspaper. However, the government has passed new regulations so that if it is not reasonably practicable for reasons connected to the effects of coronavirus, etc., etc. My big fear is that we are probably going to see a number of big planning applications. I've had one in my patch, which is coming up, which is right in the middle of Corona, and we aren't consulting residents as adequately as we should be. You don't need to hide behind Corona to actually go and put something up on a lamppost. That should still continue as normal. You can still socially distance with putting something up on a lamppost. Also, sending letters to the nearby residents. We should, as a workforce, still have someone in the office dealing with some of the urgent items that need to be done. Someone can generate the letters from home, mail merge the letters, and print them to the office and have them sent out. It just means that as authorities, as other workplaces are finding, and I'm finding myself, you just have to learn to work in a different way, learn and work not necessarily harder, but smarter, and get these things done. So we need to ensure, and I would hope the Cabinet would give an undertaking tonight that they will still ensure that letters are sent out to all residents and that site notices are still put out on lampposts, because lampposts actually are one of the biggest ways of getting residents to notice something. If they walk past some piece of land, like they do at Golf Drive, and they walk past a lamppost walking their dog, that is the first thing they notice, because they aren't actually in the immediate vicinity where they would normally get lettered, but they have an interest in the application anyway. We should make sure that as a council that we maintain those principles of putting out letters and publicising them on street lamps, etc., so that residents are fully informed. COVID, in my view, is not an excuse for failing to do that, because you can get around COVID and social distancing, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Points of clarification. Councillor Phillips, is it a point of clarification?
No, it isn't a point of clarification, Chair. It's a point of I recognise what Councillor Wilson is saying, and we will continue as a council to inform as many people as we possibly can in the locality of any changes that will happen. So I will, I've listened to what he said, I've noted what he says, and I will discuss it with the planning department.
Thank you. Final speaker on this item from the public, Councillor Kondaka.
Thank you, Chair. The vast majority of people in Nuneaton and Bedworth are totally fed up with the planning department and believe that they can never have any result. That's not actually true. We actually had an application at the BP petrol station for hot food takeaway, recommended for approval, turned down by the planning committee, which I'm very pleased by, and actually the planning inspector agreed with the planning committee. So planning can actually work, but the public doesn't believe it because of the obstacles they have in using the process. The first obstacle is our computer system. You cannot find documents and you cannot link to a document. If there's a planning application, you cannot do a link to the planning application or a document. Our IT needs sorting so that if the planning application, You go to a web page where every document is instantly there and linkable to, rather than this cockeyed thing. And the other thing that's really important is that when documents change, we know they change, because I have been caught out and in trouble with standards as developers change documents in the week before a planning meeting. This does not give the public any chance, because they will not microscopically compare documents and notice that things have changed at the last minute. We need a decent planning portal with dates and revision numbers so that anyone can see if they went on in September when an application went in, and then they went on in December when it went to committee, they can see which documents were just put in the week before the planning committee. And the planning committee needs to involve the public better. We can't have planning officers saying things at the end of their statement which the public cannot respond to. On the Bellway one, they said, oh, well, the 5-year land supply is now plummeted. That was after public speaking.
Councillor Condacor, I am going to interrupt you. We're not here to discuss individual planning applications. It's the report in front of us.
No, Chair, the point I wanted to make as an example is we have to give the public the addendum and any comments or changes that the planning officers are going to make at the meeting before they have their chance to talk. Otherwise, they do their I don't like this because of, and then the planning officers say, well, that doesn't matter because of X, and they can't reply because they don't know the planning officer has had a deal with the developer to change something. The system is very, very unfriendly to the public at the moment, and it is a right pain. So I think we need a total review of planning and actually have an exemplary system where the public have a fair chance, if they've got a legitimate concern, that application can either be refused or modified so that the flooding or the tree or whatever can be sorted. Our planning system is non-functional, and the public may want to scrap the Nuneaton and Bedworth Borough Council purely because they're fed up of how they've been run roughshod over with planning. I don't want that to happen. I want to get our planning system working well. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Councillor Condacor. Any points of clarification? No. Just before I bring Councillor Phillips in, I think the addendums are actually circulated outside of where the room planning committee takes place pre-COVID days, but I'm not sure what happens now we are working remotely. That may be more difficult. Councillor Phillips.
Yeah. Councillor Condacor, if you've got a problem or you think you've got a problem, then you should email me with these concerns, as always, because planning department under me works within the law. So, you know, you talk about these things on this forum at this time, but this is the first thing I've heard about it. And as cabinet member for planning, right, I will defend planning department to the end of my day because they follow the law. So if you have concerns about anything on planning, please email me.
Thank you. Councillor Phillips, can I just ask, there were a couple of comments made by Michelle Condacor in terms of some organisations having changed their names now. I think from listening, primary care trusts have now been replaced by clinical commissioning groups, etc., is my understanding. Can we have assurance that those sorts of issues will be addressed should we approve the report tonight?
Yes, you can, Chair.
Yeah, I just think it might need a little bit of going through to make sure that the terminology we're using is correct. Any further comments on this? I've got an officer. Phil, you're wanting to come in, Phil Larter?
Yes, please. I think it's a really good point made that some of the bits at the back of the SCR are out of date. It is 5 years old, and that's why in the last paragraph of the report it makes that clear that it is old, it is due a review, and they're the sort of things that it will be undertaken when we review it. But what I didn't want to do was to do a fundamental review of it now without any consultation, because then there would be an accusation that I'd gone through the entire document, changed it all, and just put it on the web without telling anybody. So that's why that last paragraph's in there. So I just wanted to make that clear. It's a good point, well made. I am aware of it.
Thank you very much. That looks like that's in hand in any event then. Thank you. Any more speakers? Councillor Phillips, you've moved the recommendations. I'm happy to second those. Any dissent from that? No, that then is approved. Thank you very much, and thank you to our speakers. Item 12 is the draft Nuneaton and Bedworth Community Infrastructure Levy charging schedule, and we're back to Councillor Phillips. I think Councillor Phillips just needs to unmute. Hello, Councillor Phillips, can you unmute and introduce item 12?
Is this the briefing note from the draft community infrastructure levy?
It is indeed, Councillor Phillips. Thank you.
Right, okay. The community infrastructure levy, basically, it's something, although I've got a note here, it's something that we need to have. Right, the levy would help development in their area to go forward to delivering infrastructure. It would generate additional income above the existing Section 106 processes that are in place. The levy rates will have to be set out in a charging structure, which specifies the rates for different development types and locations. To comply with the legal requirements, the charging schedule has to be subject to public consultation, which we will go out to. It then has to be submitted to the independent examination, and once approved, the examiner can see if the levy be accepted. Based on the viability evidence, it is considered that a levy for the borough is suitable for certain types of development. The levy is considered viable to charge for the strategic residential allocations given the additional complexities and costs associated with delivery, particularly given the wealth of policy and Section 106 requirements already established throughout the borough plan examination process. However, a charge on smaller scale developments is considered viable, as well as unallocated greenfield sites and on large retail units. Unfortunately, the government's planning white paper, which is currently subject to public consultation, proposes replacing existing Section 106 monies and community infrastructure levies with a new national infrastructure levy. As the white paper consultation, there remains some uncertainty at this stage as to what the final proposals will be, or associated timescales for implementing any changes, as the bill would need to be presented, debated, enacted, and any changes written into law. Given these uncertainties, it is considered there is merit in consulting on the draft changing schedule. Depending on the outcome of the white paper, Chair, the Council can then review its approach in terms of whether to proceed with the examination process. Should the additional national infrastructure levy proposals be fast-tracked, the government's evidence of consultation will put the Council in a stronger position to lobby government in an appropriate charge to deliver the necessary infrastructure to the borough. At this present moment in time, Chair, I therefore recommend that Cabinet approve the public consultation on the draft community infrastructure levy charging schedule. And I say that because we're in a situation whereby we don't know what's going to happen in the future, but we have to move within the laws, the planning laws that we have at this present moment in time. So I would hope that the Cabinet will accept the situation, that we go to public consultation and see what the public actually require at this present moment in time, whilst waiting for the government to come up with their proposals.
Thank you, Councillor Phillips. Michelle Kondarka, can I invite you to address the meeting?
Thank you. I'm just a bit concerned about this because it doesn't make any sense as far as I can read into it, and without any consultation meetings where we can actually ask planning policy or planning people actually the ins and outs, I'm rather concerned about it, because I don't really understand sort of how it works in conjunction with section 106 thing, and it just, to me as an outsider, it doesn't sort of all tally, because in one moment it's being said that we need and yet in 3.2 it says there should be still rates should be set at a level which ensures they will not render new development in the area financially unviable things. But then it says funding obtained through the levy should be used to deliver infrastructure needed to support development in the area. But then when you look through, the level for most of the development, i.e. all the areas that are already in the borough plan, as far as I can see, have a zero sill value and things. So, you know, those are the areas, and we've got a massive area around here in the north of Nuneaton that needs infrastructure if the houses are going to go in, and yet the sill is zero. So I just don't understand how it all adds up. And as I say, I can only imagine that the material that will go to the consultation is what's here in your cabinet paper. And I mean, I've had some dealings with planning over the years, and I don't fully understand it and things. So Joe Bloggs Public, who hasn't had any dealings whatsoever with planning, I don't see how they're going to stand a hope in hell of being able to make head nor tail and know whether it's good, bad, or indifferent. So, you know, that's basically, you know, my concerns. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. Are there any points of clarification? I'm not seeing any. Can I thank you for your comments? I'm sure some of those issues will be addressed later. Next, I have Councillor Wilson. Can I invite you to contribute?
Thank you, Chair. I do welcome the bringing forward of this report for the sill levy, because really we should have had this in place a long time ago if we'd have got the borough plan sorted. It is disappointing that in some respects, our neighbours for example, in Warwick and Stratford have had theirs in place for 3 years. That's potentially 3 years of lost sill income we could have had in Nuneaton and Bedworth, which could have helped level up our communities and put them further ahead. The values look broadly in line with what the consultant's report says is feasible, and given the fact that land values are lower up in this area, it probably makes sense. But what I am concerned about, and I'm speaking more from a ward perspective on this now, is if you look at pages 196 and 197 of the report, there are some fundamental errors in this report, which makes me wonder, what is everything in this report accurate? For example, in HSG 9, which is Golf Drive, it says HSG 8 access. That's Bulkington. We already have access. It's called Bulkington Lane. I don't see how that is going to help on that front. Are you talking about HSG 10 access, which we were told isn't actually supposed to join up between HSG 9 and HSG 10. There is no reference in HSG 9 at all to having a GP surgery, yet it is in the borough plan and it is in the recently approved supplementary planning document. Where is that in here? Then if you look over the page to HSG 10, it's got health GP expansion 0.82 GPs. There is no reference anywhere in HSG 10 to having a new GP for that particular area. Yes, they will need GP provision, but the GP provision is supposed to be going into HSG 9. This then makes me wonder, what other mistakes are there in this consultant's report? And does that have an impact or a bearing on what we're being asked to approve tonight, which is the rough values we want to set as our sill levies? If these are fundamental errors we are getting now, that makes me very cautious. As a ward councillor, I have had to become something nearer an expert on HSG 9 and HSG 10 over the years, and I would imagine that other councillors might find errors in their areas too. But I'm not as assured as I would like to be that we have got this right because of these fundamental errors, and I would suggest that someone goes back and seeks a bit of a rebate on the fund we've paid these DAC planning people on some areas, because they clearly haven't got the job 100% right. We might be able to help with some of the budget deficit that way if we actually get money back from people who haven't done the job properly, Chair. So thank you very much.
Sorry, I'd forgot to unmute myself then. Are there any points of clarification? I'm not going to comment about people who've done work who are not here and able to comment. Councillor Phillips, do you want to come? Oh, sorry, no, I have one more speaker. I do apologise. Councillor Kondarka, I nearly forgot you. You wanted to contribute.
Thank you, Chair. I wasn't sure if Neil wanted to ask Chris a quick follow-up question, but if that's not the case, these sill stuff should be in 3 years ago, as Chris said. It's really, really important that we have as much money from developers as possible. We shouldn't have housing built here without GPs when housing in Warwick is built with GPs because they've got more money to go around. If there is less money, then we'd build slightly less houses until we get the house price values or the needs up to needed housing. The housing plans in Nuneaton and Bedworth are 2 to 3 times more than we need for our actual population. If we're providing for other people's population problems, they should be providing us money, or they should be allowing us to charge developers community infrastructure levy. We have a fundamental problem that Coventry is dumping housing on us, as is the rest of Warwickshire, and the funding mechanisms aren't right. We have no improved rail service, no GPs, the schools are coming late. We have all these problems. And if we actually had £100 per square feet sill charge or per square metre, it might slow development down, but it might mean the infrastructure could cope with the rate of development. I do not see a problem. Land doesn't disappear. If there's a site on Top Farm or Gulf Drive that isn't developed in the next 2 or 3 years because the sill charge are high, when that housing is really, really needed, then someone can sort out the money. But if giving people the right to develop our countryside and allowing them not to pay any sill is totally unreasonable. We need the infrastructure. My GP surgery was promised in 2012. These sill documents say we should have 4 GPs added to Weddington. That may not happen for 5 or 10 years. This is not acceptable. So I do not see the problem of asking for lots of sill, being robust, and actually saying the thing it isn't viable is building 14,000 houses without infrastructure. And we can see now the Nationwide Building Society is stopping lending to some of the new housing sites because of the problems of valuation. So the valuation all ties in, but we need to build infrastructure with housing, and we have to do that while still at the moment because that's the game in town. And if we move to a national system, that might actually give us more money for infrastructure for housing rather than the pathetic amounts we get at the moment. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Are there any points of clarification? Thank you for your comments. Councillor Kondaka, Councillor Wilson and Michelle Kondaka. Councillor Phillips.
Yeah, I tend to agree with everything that's been said. Sill is a complete and utter mess. But this recommendation at the present moment in time is to go out to consultation on it. So let's go out to consultation. I don't like it. I hate it. I think it's unfair. And I can agree with everything that's been said. But at the present moment in time, it's a government, well, it was a government initiative and it's going to change again. So the recommendation is to go out to consultation. So let's go out to consultation.
Thank you. Can I ask Ashley, some comments were made about perhaps some of the allocations being referred to inappropriately. I think HS 9, I think, was one of those that was mentioned. Can we just check through to make sure that things are correct in this documentation? Pardon, sorry? Sorry, Councillor Phillips. Councillor Phillips, you're muted again, sorry.
Yeah, no, carry on, Chair.
Right, okay. Just, they're the sorts of things that will come out during the consultation in any event, I would have thought. So, is that correct, Ashley? Can I ask you if you want to make any comment?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, what we'll do, we'll do a double check just to make sure accuracy before we go out and consult. But obviously, as you say, Chair, that is the purpose of the consultation as well, to flag up any issues, and then we'll need to come back to Cabinet in terms of reporting that consultation as well. So if there's any changes as we move through the process, we'll obviously need to bring it back to yourselves.
Thank you very much. Councillor Phillips has moved the recommendations. I'm happy to second that recommendation. Any dissent from that? Not seeing anybody, so that then is approved for consultation. Moving us on to item 13. We're sticking with you, Councillor Phillips. Do you want to introduce item 13, the local development scheme?
Yes, just bear with me a second, Chair. Wrong one. Bear with me. Yeah, I'll be back. I'll be back. Right. Chair.
Thank
Can you still hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Councillor Phillips.
Yeah, so the updated local development scheme. Right. Basically, the LDS scheme acts as the council's published timetable for producing planning policy documents. Publication of the local development scheme is a statutory requirement, and the current local development scheme was adopted in September 2019, which seems a world away. However, it is now unfortunately out of date, primarily due to delays associated with the COVID-19 pandemic, and the council like many other local planning authorities, is in a position whereby it needs to update it. It was also agreed in July, local plan committee, that an updated local development scheme should be available consideration at the September this meeting. The updated local development scheme includes the key milestones and timescales for the borough plan review, despite what is happening at the government at the present moment in time, e.g. the Gypsy and Traveller site allocation document and the town centres action plan. We need to keep going forward with those. The community infrastructure levy charges, which we've just discussed, and supplementary planning documents have always been included for completeness. Basically, members may be aware that a number of planning reforms have been proposed for the government's planning white paper and associated consultations. Further detail on the proposed reforms is provided within the report that we've got. Unfortunately, as a white paper consultation, there remains some uncertainty at this stage as to what the final proposals will be or associated timescales for implementing any changes, as the bill would need to be presented, debated, and enacted for any changes to be written into law. Up to this point, local authorities are basically working on what we've got, what is in law at the present moment in time, not knowing what is going to happen to the future. But I can only say basically that we are where we are, we've got what we've got, we wait for the change, that change is going to come. But in the meantime, we carry on and move the recommendations that we've got at this present moment in time, Chair.
Speakers on this item. Councillor Wilson, can I invite you to address the committee?
Thank you, Chair. Overall, I'm broadly supportive of the local development scheme. It's some review. It's something that we have been calling for from our side of the chamber for a while, particularly because it gives us the ability to begin the review of the borough plan, which is essential to actually getting some public trust back into the planning system here in Nuneaton and Bedworth. Not only that, it's something that the inspector specified in his final report to the council, saying that it had to be revised by no later than 2023 from memory. And we are, bearing in mind that 6 months have just flashed before us, 2023 will soon be on us, I'm quite sure. But it concerns me that there are still errors in the report. So, for example, on page 295, paragraph 2.2, we are still, after all this time, referring to the car parking standards SPD. It no longer exists in the fact that it's only a guide only. We can't enforce it. The inspector has said we can't. On the planning committee, we've been told for years we can't use it because we used to have the old standard of 1.5 cars per dwelling, but we can't use it anymore. In fact, if I remember rightly, Catherine Morton, before she left, said that one of the SPDs we were supposed to be doing last time that were just approved should have actually addressed the car parking standards issue. But it's misleading to residents to still think that at the moment there is a SPD from car parking standards from 2003. So we need to make sure that that is publicised and updated as quickly as possible, because one of the issues you do get from residents in planning applications is, are there going to be enough car parking spaces? And that is something that they will hone upon. One of the other issues that I have is in relation to page 298, paragraph 3.11, the town centre's area action plan. It is, in my view, absolutely vital that we get this consultation going as quickly as possible in accordance with the timescale of September 2020. We are doing an awful lot of work on transforming Nuneaton and the town deal board and moving things forward, and we have to make sure that all of these areas dovetail together. Otherwise, we're going to end up with confusion and a loss of confidence in driving forward the regeneration of Nuneaton Town Centre, and then hopefully Bedworth Town Centre to follow if transforming Bedworth is able to get moving. So those are my main points, Chair, that I am concerned really about the some of the outdated information and making sure that we get this town centre's area action plan moved forward as quickly as possible, because that is going to be essential for driving forward confidence in anything that we do with the town centres moving forward.
You're muted, Julie.
You are quite right, Councillor Phillips. I was muted. I've unmuted myself. Was it a point of clarification of Councillor Wilson?
No, it was a point that if Councillor Wilson just wants to send me an email on his concerns, I will obviously look at them. That's okay.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments, Councillor Wilson. I believe Councillor Kondaka. Can I bring you in next, please?
Thank you, Chair. This isn't just late due to COVID. We had a borough plan that was a 2010 to 28 borough plan that became a 2011 borough plan. So 2011, and so the plan is 9 years out of date, 9 years in, and so much of this stuff in this timescale should have been done and should have been done 5 or 10 years ago. We urgently need that review, which it talks about for the housing numbers. In context, we built 3,600 houses so far in the borough in this plan, and the population has increased by 4,400 people. So when we're looking at going forward, we're almost halfway through the 20-year plan. We've built 3,600 houses for 4,400 people. We need the plan to be revised so it understands that's the rate at which the borough is developing. There are things in here like the green transport issues, and I think that will go through and include parking standards as well. So that's an important supplementary planning document we need to get through. And we also need to have understanding, because like Councillor Wilson was talking about parking standards. If we're redeveloping town centre housing, we do not need those to have parking spaces. Half the young population do not have a car. So to build every house with parking spaces is not a sensible thing to do going forward. Building houses that are a long way from town centres with adequate parking is. So we need to get this work done on the green infrastructure and the new supplementary planning guidance around that. We have so much we need to do in terms of public transport. We're talking about rebuilding our swimming pools. Our swimming pools aren't, or particularly the Pingles, isn't on a decent bus route. So in terms of our supplementary planning guidance, when there's new infrastructure, we need to actually put in the bus stops and the bus routes. And I know that's county, so it's difficult, but we do need to actually get a greener, more sustainable borough. So all this supplementary planning stuff should be delivering that for us. And it is very disappointing that this is blamed on COVID. COVID has delayed things by 6 months. I say a lot of stuff is actually 9 years late. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for your comments. Any points of clarification? Thank you for your comments, both. Councillor Phillips, anything you want to add at this stage?
I just want a better economic, cultural borough. I move the recommendations that on this agenda.
Thank you. I'll second those. All cabinet members, are you happy with this? If you're not, can you indicate by using the hand function? I'm not seeing any, so that report then is approved. Thank you very much. Moving on then to item 14, Nuneaton and Bedworth Sport England facilities planning models. Councillor Lloyd.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, this report provides a refresh to the previous modelling undertaken in 2015 for the Council's adopted leisure strategy and local plan supporting information. It's evidence-based data produced by Sport England, provides the data and the capacity levels for the Council's leisure facilities as detailed in the report's appendices. The report undertaken in March of this year reaffirms the need that existing leisure sites are at their capacity, and there is a need for developing new sites and new space to meet the need of the meet the borough's need. Now moving forward with the housing developments being undertaken in the borough. This evidence also supports the Council's request for Section 106 and SIL development contributions towards the funding required for additional as detailed in the adopted leisure strategy and plan. And I'll leave it at that for the time being, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Lloyd. I have one speaker, Councillor Kondaka.
Thank you very much, Chair. It's really useful to have such a detailed document, but obviously it then opens up lots of questions, particularly about the pace of this and trying to simultaneously do 3 different leisure centres. I think it's been accepted across all parties. The Bedworth Leisure Centre is past its useful life, and we should be throwing everything into replacing that building. There's a massive opportunity to do that. And this council has quite often been over ambitious. And I do think trying to do 3 sports things at the same time is grossly ambitious and is bound to fail, which is why I think we do one really well and then plan in 7 or 8 years' time to do the next one. In this document, it's talking about Top Farm in 2023. Well, they're still digging up the Roman remains and doing ground investigation works. And that site has been in planning for 3 years, a planning application not determined. And it's clear with COVID, things aren't going to move fast. Unfortunately, all the population growth has been in Wellington and Camp Hill. Today, the ONS produced the latest data by wards, and Wellington has grown 17% in 8 years. Massive population growth. Camp Hill has grown 20%, the population of Camp Hill, in the last 8 years. So there's a clear pressure for sports facilities in the north of Nuneaton. But we do have this problem that our most dilapidated facility is in Bedworth. So we are going to have problems. But I do want us to have a plan that works, is based upon sound numbers, and will still work if over the 20 years we build 8,000 houses. As I said, with the build rate and recessions and ups and downs, looks like in the first 10 years of a plan, we built 4,000 houses. In the second year of the borough plan, second decade, we'll build 4,000 houses. And that isn't in the modelling. Yeah, we need some modelling based upon a realistic post-COVID world, because the population growth is going to be very different. Universities and the motor manufacturing industries, the rapid growth we had is going to be slower. And so I don't want us to over-plan and end up with failed projects. I want us to have a new leisure centre in Bedworth. When my mother lived in Bedworth, I used the Bedworth Leisure Centre quite a lot. So I know it needs doing, but we need to be realistic in our plans. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any points of clarification? Thank you for your comments, Councillor Kondaka. Anything you need to come back on, Councillor Lloyd?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just a couple of things that Councillor Kondaka has mentioned. First of all, the Tops Farm 2023 is county driven, so it'll be dependent on the county council on the speed that that's delivered. The Bedworth Pool, well, I think we've shown our commitment. You know, you've only got to look at the next 2 reports, and that shows what our commitment is to building a new Bedworth wet centre. The Nuneaton Pool is targeted within the plan some years later, so it is putting a priority on Bedworth. Bedworth Pool has issues, and you know, sometime in the future, if we don't rebuild that pool, it's going to fail. There's no doubt about it. It's old, and old things break down a lot more often. So it is essential that we move forward with a commitment to rebuild that pool. I think this is a fantastic model for moving forward on those projects, and I don't think we're being over ambitious. If we are, I apologise, you know, but I think, you know, we're trying to deliver what people have asked us to deliver, and we can do that from this document and the preceding documents that we're going to discuss later. So I recommend the recommendation, Chair, which is in 2.1.
And I'll second that, Chair.
And that's seconded. Shall we move straight to the vote then? I think these are exciting times for Nuneaton and Bedworth. It's good to see our aspirations are looking to the future as well as the needs of the present. Is there anyone who is unhappy with the recommendations? Not seeing anyone, so I'm taking that as agreement. Thank you, Councillor Lloyd. And we move straight on. It's straight to you again, Councillor Lloyd, with the British Cycling Stage 2 application.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Another exciting item on the agenda. This report provides an update to Cabinet on the recent notification for Nuneaton and Bedworth Council to submit to Stage 2 funding to the British Cycling as part of the Places to Ride Fund. The notification for Stage 2 application does not guarantee by any way that the council will receive the funding towards its cycling infrastructure, but shows that the funding body are interested in what the council are looking to develop as part of its overall leisure strategy linked to an active environment and facilities. There will be a need to match fund. You know, that's clear in the report. Any successful application to the British Cycling as part of this development, if this development is successful, obviously. So, Chair, I'm not going to harp on too long. I'm going to give other members the opportunity to speak, and I'll wait there and I'll come back after.
Thank you. We do have 3 speakers on this. First of all, Michelle Kondaka. Thank you, Michelle.
You. Obviously, as chair of the Nuneaton and Bedworth Cycle Forum, unsurprisingly, I would support this application. It'd be good to get money. I understand that, you know, it's not guaranteed and that we would have to match fund, but I think it's a really, really big opportunity to improve cycling routes around the boroughs, through the parks and things. In the park consultation that was done recently, there was quite a lot of good stuff in there, making sort of cycle routes through the parks, and particularly sort of where they exit the park, matching that up with where crossings are and linking into other things. So I think it would be really good. And I think the COVID crisis has shown the importance of cycling for transport, for health. It's so much easier to social distance, you know, on a bicycle than it is on many, you know, if you're walking or whatever. And also, as you've got further on in the agenda, climate change. I mean, we need to absolutely be encouraging people to cycle, and yeah, this would be a great way of doing so. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Councillor. Sorry, Michelle Kondaka. I'm getting mixed up between Kondakas. My apologies. Are there any points of clarification? No, can I thank you for your comments and move on to Councillor Wilson? No, yes, it is Councillor Wilson next. Thank you, Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Chair. I want to welcome this report and the application which is moving forward. As the old saying goes, you have to be in it to win it. If we don't put an application forward, then there's 100% certainty that we won't get anything. At least there's a possibility, if we do put an application forward, that we might get something. I remember, although I wasn't able to attend myself because I was at work, I remember the excitement and the buzz about when we had these cycling events coming through in Nuneaton town centre, which were jointly funded by both the borough and the county council in those areas to help move those forward. And the turnout was exceptional, I think it was fair to say, and it helped increase footfall through the town centre. And if only we could be able to do that nowadays, I think we would all think back to that. I think if only we could just organise something like that now, it would be the least of our worries. But I think we have to try and temper aspiration with reality, but also make sure that if we do get this, that we maximise our what we get throughout the money that we put forward, because London 2012 increased interest in cycling, Rio 2016 did. It's a shame that Tokyo 2020 is not going ahead, but 2021 may be the year where we find in Nuneaton and Bedworth the next Jason Kenny or Laura Trott. And hopefully this application, if we are successful, will do just that. So on our benches, we are perfectly happy to support this application moving forward. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Any points of clarification? Not seeing any. Thank you for your comments. And Councillor Kondaka.
Unsurprisingly, I'm very, very keen on spending the money in actually getting the parks open for cycling and connecting them to our leisure centres. There is such a massive health gain to actually cycling to the running track, cycling to the swimming pool, cycling to the disc golf, and you see the Pingles, and yeah, the railings outside the Pingles on a nice day are full of bicycles locked to the railings rather than to the cycle stands. So to actually go through and actually have this cycling vision for our parks is going to be really good. And as I keep mentioning, a large number of our residents, particularly like Abbey Ward and similar wards in Bedworth, are not owning cars. So the Pingles is a very ideal cycling distance from parts of Abbey Ward, parts of Attleborough, etc., and similarly in Bedworth. So if we can start to get these routes through the parks and facilities in parks, and the things for the younger people to go and bounce their bikes up and down ramps and slopes and things, it's really going to help the health of our population. And it saves us money because we don't need to provide lots more parking spaces at the Pingles and at the Bedworth Leisure Centre. We also have a very, very successful park run in Bedworth, and it's great people cycling to that and things. So it's all part of an integrated, getting us healthier. And it's really nice that Coventry's just launched a new cycle route and approved that this week. So I see a tide turning. And the one thing I would ask is that these routes don't stop at the boundaries of the park, and we can try and get better integration so that from the Nuneaton town centre you get nicely through to the park. From Bedworth town centre, it's a bit clunky around Bedworth cycling. There's loads of issues in the pedestrianised area, a lack of cycle routes in Bedworth, and if we actually get that sorted, we get the park sorted and we get through to Hawkesbury and things, we actually have lots and lots of opportunities both to cycle in the parks and use the parks as a way to get on for onward journeys. So really positive about this. And can I just also mention, we need these routes in Whittleford Park and Sandon Park as well. We have some money to do some routing through Sandon Park in Weddington, and there's already a route through Whittleford Park in Camp Hill, but we need to actually then bring these routes out and actually get our cycle routes network done. Because I mean, in an ideal sunny Sunday afternoon, people could cycle from Camp Hill across Whittleford Park. We need a way of getting onto the town centre and then through to Riversley Park to the Pingles. There's lots of opportunities. And likewise in Bedworth, if we start getting those connectivity issues sorted, get rid of the buzz lanes you can't cycle in and things, so that people in parts of Bedworth can cycle through into the Miners' Welfare Park, go for a swim. Yeah, we can be a lot healthier society. And one of the things COVID's taught us again is the more we actually get exercise, the less our risk of dying from these sort of diseases. So get the weight off, get the blood pressure down, get the cycling done. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kondaka. Dead on the timing clock there. Any points of clarification? No. Councillor Lloyd, anything else you want to say on this item?
Yes, just to take on board all the comments that have been said, all the positive comments that have been said by members. I can assure you we do take it seriously, and at the beginning of the year, members will remember that we carried out a consultation electronically right across the borough on our parks, and that is played a big part in shaping the future of our parks. And you know, some of the detail from that consultation has gone into shaping those parks, and all I can say is this is part of that. This is what people were asking for back in February and March, and that's what we're trying to deliver. So other than that, I'll recommend the recommendation, Chair, in 2.1.
Thank you. I'd like to second that, and in doing so say I think this is really exciting because it ticks so many of those things where Nuneaton and Bedworth really needs to benefit from investment in things that will make us healthier, get us out into the fresh air a bit more. And although I'm not a keen cyclist, I'm very much an amateur cyclist. I'm sure we can all try to get better. One thing, Councillor Wilson, yes, I do want to see Nuneaton and Bedworth produce the next Laura Trott or Olympic gold medalists, but I also think there's something in this for those who aren't perhaps going to be Olympic champions, but are going to benefit in terms of health and activity levels. So I'm really happy to second that. Any other comments? I'm not seeing any. Cabinet, can I ask if you are not supportive of the recommendation, you please show now. In that case, then I'm going to take it that Cabinet approves that report. Thank you very much. Item 16, MBBC procurement strategy, and it's over to Councillor Lloyd again.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be brief. The report provides Cabinet with the procurement options for its future delivery of the borough-wide physical activity investment projects, some of the ones that we've just been talking about, at Bedworth and Pingles. Working with the Council's leisure consultants, and Sport England, obviously, project management and design and cost consultants, etc., specialists in the field, and undertaking supporting councils with this work. This strategy has been drafted to look at all options the council can consider for its future investment in meeting its necessary procurement and legislative requirements of projects this size. And we do that because we recognise, obviously, we haven't got that expertise within our council, so we need to go out there and get that expertise. Chair, I'll leave it at that, and I'll come back if needed.
Okay, thank you very much. I have one speaker on this, Councillor Kondaka.
Yeah, just very briefly, all looks wonderful. One of the things I'd just like to flag is sometimes these things go wrong or lose oversight. So I hope when we build this framework and get contractors working, we can actually sort of write into the agreement that we get a 6-monthly presentation from the contractors, like we do from our contractors providing regular services like the Everyone Active. If we've got this massive framework, and I don't know how many millions and millions, it's probably tens of millions is going through this, I do think we need the governance issues to actually have a regular 6-monthly or something progress report to scrutiny as part of this process, because we've had people doing the regeneration of the Abbey Street and Vicarage Street sites, and it all goes off and it's all wonderful, and you've done a framework and you've done this, and then the project falls apart. So I would like, just write in that six monthly governance reports to scrutiny. Thank you.
Thank you. Any points of clarification? Not seeing any. Can I thank you, Councillor Kondaka, for your comments? Anything you need to add at this stage, Councillor Boyd?
Yeah, just to say, I mean, I agree with Councillor Kondaka says about 6 monthly reports, but I think they should be 3 monthly myself. I'd want to know at least quarterly on how it's progressing and whether it's going to hit the targets. It was mentioned earlier on about pace. I won't apologise about pace, and that's what I want to see. I want to see this project and other projects delivered. Chair, other than that, I'll recommend the recommendations again in 2.1.
Is that seconded? I'm happy to second that.
Yeah.
Any dissent from that? If any cabinet member is dissenting, can you put your hand up? In that case, then that is approved. Thank you very much. Moving on then to item 17. This is the report of the Climate Change Emergency Working Party, which was chaired by Councillor Watkins, but falls under Councillor Phillips's portfolio. Councillor Phillips, can you introduce the report, please?
Yes, Chair. A climate change emergency for the Borough was declared at the full council, quite rightly, meeting held on the 4th of December 2019. And the resolutions made by full council are set out in section 3 of the report. Basically, a cross-party working group consisting of 9 elected members from all parties was set up. It was chaired by Councillor Watkins and supported by the committee services officer and the head of planning. The first meeting of the working group was held on the 9th of January 2020, and a total of 5 face-to-face and virtual meetings were held. Chair, the programme of meetings has had to be suspended, obviously, due to COVID-19 lockdown. This means unfortunately, it's not been possible to meet the original timescale set by the full council for the working group and to report back to council. The working group looked at the measures already in place and planned for which could help the council meet the target of being carbon neutral in its activities by 2030. The working group received information from several officers of the council, either in person or in written statements. Chair, arising from the working group's meetings, the action plan attached in Appendix A has been produced, which, while it will probably need to be further developed and refined over the coming months, does provide a starting point for the council on what will be a long environmental journey. So for the recommendations for Cabinet to consider are set out in section 2 of the report in paragraphs 2.1, 2.2 and 2.3, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Phillips. Councillor Watkins, since you chaired this committee, did you want to make any comment before I bring the speakers in?
I'd rather let the speakers come in and then I'll have a comment, Chair.
Okay, thank you. I've got 3 speakers on this. Michelle Kondaka.
Thank you. I've got to say, sort of a bit disappointed really by the action plan because it doesn't seem to be very sort of ambitious. And most of the things on there, it said, oh, consider this, consider that. And there are a lot of those things I think I would hope that the council was already considering in terms of like LED lighting, energy consumption, you know, energy efficiency on new.
They are doing.
Yeah, that's why.
Not muted.
Sorry, Michelle, can you continue? I think Councillor Phillips had a problem with his mute button.
He did.
You know, new leisure facilities or whatever being energy efficient. I mean, these things that must be absolutely automatic, you know, and all right, have them in the action plan, but it's almost that they're in the action plan simply so that they can then be ticked and said, oh yes, we're doing that, which things should be automatic. And I would have liked to see much more stuff that can be done here and now, like more tree planting, meat-free catering. I mean, I know the only thing that is catered for at Borough really is the mare making, and that was obviously didn't happen this year anyway and things. But having that as meat-free, they're just all really simple things that could be done just like that without costing anything different. The mayoral car doesn't come up at all, and to me that is a big one. There is absolutely no need in my eyes for there to be a mayor's car, and if there was, it should be an electric plug-in. We've got a plug-in charger at the back of the town hall. Things that I didn't spot on there, and things I might have not looked carefully enough. Temperature in the council office, and the number of times I've been at meetings in the council chamber and absolutely sweltering, the heating on for what seems like full blast, and yet all the windows having to be open before everyone passes out, and things like that should be being grabbed by the horn, so to speak, and being dealt with now. Swimming pool, consider reducing the temperature and things. Well, I mean, obviously I haven't been swimming for quite a while with COVID and what have you and things, but you'll just put off people going if you make it any colder, because a lot of the time it's only just about okay in my eyes anyway and things. So it is a little bit disappointing, what to say. And recycling, well, surely that was being done and should have been done for the last 10, 20 years. Well, I don't know what else to say other than it needs to be far more ambitious and moved on pretty fast, because we've got a climate emergency. It's not oh yes, okay, it's something we need to do in 20 years time and things, because that'll be too late. It needs to be done now.
Thank you for your comments. Any points of clarification? Not seeing anything. Thank you very much. The next speaker is Councillor Wilson.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I spoke in favour at the full council of establishing this working group, and I also supported a number of amendments which would have actually given some more teeth to trying to deal with the climate emergency, which were turned down by the controlling group. And unfortunately, whilst there are a number of good items in here, I don't yet feel this action plan is ready to be approved by full council. There are a number of glaringly obvious holes in this report. So, for example, there's nothing in here about establishing a baseline. What is our actual carbon footprint as a council? Does anyone actually know? What are the energy ratings of our buildings? They aren't displayed, or I haven't noticed any energy rating displays within the town hall or the civic hall or anything when I've been around them, and any of the other major council offices and facilities. What are going to be the metrics for actually seeing whether we are doing what we say we want to do, whether we are achieving any of these? So what is our baseline footprint now? What are we going to reduce it to? What has it been reduced to this year? How many tons of carbon have we stopped emitting into the atmosphere? How much money has been saved by, if we are going to reduce the swimming pool by 2 degrees, if that is what is decided? There should be, in theory, a saving on the heating bill. What is the money saved on that? And any of the other things that we do, or LED lights, moving to LED lights, they are more reliable and they are cheaper than the standard emission lights. So we also need to collate the information on our website to show exactly what we have done, where we have been, where we are going, and where we aim to be at. And the actual council resolution, if you read it in the report, it says to put with timescales. The only actual timescale, I may be wrong, but the only one I can actually see is on page 414, where it says commence work on an updated leisure contract specification to be implemented from 2024. I can't see any other timescales really in this action plan, and yet that was the motion which you, as a controlling group, put forward, and yet that has not been achieved in this report. It hasn't looked at how the departments can look at reducing their footprints. We need to have action plans for the actual departments about how each directorate is going to reduce its footprint and make improvements towards the climate change agenda. One of the biggest areas we can look at is the Bedworth Civic Hall. Lights turned on even when there aren't shows on. There are the amount of plastics that we have going out of the Civic Hall on the bar. This is just not ready for approval, Chair.
Thank you for your comments. Are there any points of clarification? Not seeing any. I think I have one last speaker, Councillor Kondaka.
Thank you, Chair. This report is deeply disappointing, as was the working group. We have a massive emergency. California is on fire this week. We have melting glaciers. We have a massive population migration going to happen to avoid countries that become unlivable in high temperatures. We have a real emergency, far, far bigger than COVID, coming in the next couple of years. And we're talking about tinkering, fiddling while the ship sinks. This should have been a radical plan. Warwick did some marvellous stuff in looking at their climate emergency. They had firm plans, they had costs, and they had a radical idea of doing something. This is a business as usual, let's tinker around the edges plan. It should have been radical, and it should have looked at planning. We are building appallingly inefficient homes, or the developers are. We have a planning policy to align houses for solar gain. So you put the windows on the south side, you build them east-west. We haven't enforced the only planning rule we have for energy efficiency, not enforced. As Chris mentioned, we aren't measuring things. When we get a report, it doesn't say this policy, for example, the rebuild or changing of the flats, will add or subtract so many tons of CO2. That way, when you've got option A, B, C, you can see option C is the one best for climate. This has been a massive missed opportunity. It is pathetic what we're planned. And I hope this is, well, I would have set fire to it if it wasn't for the carbon input of setting fire to this document. It's really, really weak. And I really would like strong action on planning, strong action on transport. It says we can't do anything about transport. We're the planning authority. When something is built, it needs to have bus services, cycle routes, all the stuff in planning should be developing a sustainable society, zero carbon. And this council is just not got that ambition. It is really, really disappointing because I know you're all good people who want to do good stuff for the planet. And this is why I suggested we got an expert in to address these working parties. So someone who actually understood or did it in another council, how to get to a zero carbon society. We have not had expertise come to us in the zero carbon agenda. This is a massive loss of opportunity. And this report is just a total waste of time. We need to do it again. We need to look at real zero carbon, and we need to do stuff quickly. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any points of clarification? Can I thank the speakers for their comments? Chris, I'm going to come to you because you did say you'd like to input after the speakers.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Absolutely shocking what I've just heard. Councillor Concord's actually on the working group, so he had his say. And to say things such as we are building terrible houses and homes is absolutely disgraceful. We had the different experts come in from different departments to tell us exactly what we're doing, and we are doing a lot of things now already. I actually thought that people on the other groups were quite shocked with what we were doing and how much we are actually doing. And if we can do more, we will do, and we'll do it as soon as possible. Like it says, it was a cross-party working group. And so we had independent, a Green, Conservative and Labour groups, and we was all having a say. And like I say, lots of experts came in, had their says on what we were already doing, and we were only going to improve on what we were already doing. It might not sound much by reducing the temperature 1 or 2 degrees, but it is a massive saving. The energy ratings for buildings, we've seen all the energy ratings for buildings. If you talk to people that are in your group, you will find it, because we've had them all. If you mean, do you want them displayed in each building? That shouldn't be a problem. We've got them all, so we can easily do that. Yeah, that's not so. Yeah, I think it was a good effort. Obviously, things can get better, and we will make sure that we can improve on if we go forward with the recommendations, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Phillips, did you want to come back?
No, Chair, something, but Chris has covered the points.
Okay, that's wonderful. Chris is quite happy. I think you did move the recommendations, Neil. I think Chris was seconding those. Is there any dissent from the recommendation as printed? Not seeing any, so therefore that item is approved and will go to full council. Item 18, recommendations from overview and scrutiny panels. We don't have any. And that brings us on to item 19, which is the devolution white paper and review of local government in Warwickshire. This is an update paper. As members are aware, the government proposes to produce a white paper this autumn, and it is understood that this will now be in around October. Cabinet previously agreed to jointly commission a review of all options available for local government reorganisation in Warwickshire. Importantly, a structured and widespread public consultation exercise is also being carried out. Warwickshire County Council called an extraordinary cabinet meeting on the 27th of August to consider the results of their Price Waterhouse Coopers study entitled A Strategic Case for Change. Warwickshire County Council agreed, and I'll read what they agreed, that Cabinet approves the submission to Government of the Strategic Case for Change for a single unitary council for Warwickshire, so as to preserve the opportunity for Warwickshire to be considered in an early tranche of local government reform, and that the Chief Executive is authorised in consultation with the leader to make any amendments considered necessary to advance or in advance of submission. This evening, Nuneaton and Bedworth Borough Council's Cabinet is asked to note the latest position and consider any actions it wishes to take. Due to the timescales involved in this, it is not subject to call-in. I probably will want to move something, but I do very much want to listen to our two speakers on this item. We have Councillor Kondaka.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, I'll declare I'm also a county councillor. I'm not on the cabinet, so I don't think I need to declare it, but it's important to know I sit on both authorities, and neither authority is who I work for. I work for the public, and I'd like to get the best for the public in Nuneaton out of this very, very rushed process. That's why I want to ask lots of questions, and I sent Brent and Simone a list of questions which hasn't yet been answered. Hopefully it'll come out of the work the consultants are doing. But we need to have a solution that changes local government, makes it better for the public, and actually protects the best bits we've got. I am sometimes very critical of this council, but this council also does an awful lot of really important stuff, particularly the council housing. We have about 5,000 council houses, mostly flats and various things around the borough. There's an awful lot we must not throw away, and we mustn't move the centre of gravity of the jobs down south. We need the jobs in the Nuneaton and Bedworth, and we need people in the Nuneaton and Bedworth who are part of running the council. I did suggest almost flippantly when it was suggested about the unitary that, okay, we'll have a unitary, but we'll base it in the Nuneaton and Bedworth. But the idea is a valid one. We need to actually move the centre of gravity to where the need is greatest. And whatever structure we have, be it getting our 2 tiers working better, having 2 unitaries, or having 1 unitary, it has got to actually be that benefit. And to say we'll save £22 million if we lose 500 jobs, is that worth it? And if the jobs move south, and if the control, and so I'm not deciding which option I'm going through yet, because there's so many questions. I have an awful lot I disagree with the Borough Council on. I have an awful lot I disagree with the County Council on. And I hope through the consultation process, we can get to some new structure which serves the public better. When they ring up about a hedge, someone sorts it rather than passes it from borough to council to borough to council. When we have planning, we have integrated transport, and we don't have this, oh, it hasn't got a cycle lane joined up here because that bit was a borough bit and this bit was a county bit. We need to do an awful lot better. We need to join up, but I don't think the current unitary proposals are right for the borough, because they're just unresponsive and about doing a cost saving cut down. I actually want better public services. Obviously, we need them to work at a reasonable cost, and that's why things like waste, I think we should join up and have a combined waste authority, because it doesn't make sense having 6 different waste authorities. But for so much other stuff, I want us to do things local better. And this idea of, oh, well, we'll just do double devolution. Well, we don't know what that is yet. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Are there any points of clarification of Councillor Kondaka? I'm not seeing any. Thank you very much. Councillor Seckham, I'm conscious you've had to wait quite a long time in our meeting. Our apologies for that, but we've had a record number of contributions this evening and a longer agenda than normally. But we welcome any comments you wish to make.
Well, thank you very much, Leader, and I am pleased to address you tonight, and thank you for allowing me to do so. It's very helpful. I just wanted to bring a few points in which I think maybe members are or are not aware of, and correct a couple of points. Firstly, the proposals that came forward and that we're here talking about tonight actually started back at the end of June, when Stratford District Council and Warwick District Council put forward their proposals to consider a merger of the 2 southern districts in advance of the white paper. Whatever happens with 2 will affect all 6 councils, and that is absolutely a fact. It will fundamentally change the way we can serve our residents. It's really important that what we do is all together come to the right solution for the residents of Warwickshire, and in particular, in your case, the residents of Nuneaton and Bedworth. We have commissioned the PwC report, the case for change that you talked about. We've also offered to contribute towards the district and boroughs change proposal that they have put forward, which will be coming out shortly as well. And we still have that on the table, and we certainly have contributed towards the findings and populated the terms of reference to it. And as far as I am concerned, it is important that we do all talk together about what is best for residents. The Cabinet passed the recommendation that you've read out on the 27th of August. I will just update you that it is not our intention to submit that case for change in advance of the council meeting on the 22nd, and that is a recent update which I can give you information about. So this will not be going forward because we have a number of councillors who all want to contribute towards the discussion on the 22nd, and I think it is right that we allow them to do that and then consider that afterwards. And of course, part of the next stage, should that go forward, would be to open the discussion to residents as well. Our case looked at 3 options. One was the status quo, one was 2 unitary proposals, and one was a single unitary proposal. And it was the Cabinet decision, not the County Council decision, that was made on the 27th. I wanted to just make that point because the Council still has its decision to make, and that will happen on the 22nd. What we all should be doing is coming together to decide the future for the residents of our areas.
Thank you, Councillor Seckham, for your comments. Are there any points of clarification of what's been said? Thank you very much. We seem to have something, a telephone going off or something. Councillor Shepherd, do you wish to speak on this item, or is it a point of clarification?
Apologies, Chair, I forgot to unmute. It's a point of clarification, Chair.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor, and it is Councillor Seckham. And I just asked then, so you've deferred your decision? You've deferred your Cabinet decision, is that what you're telling me?
Can I come in, Chairman?
Yes, Councillor Seckham, yes.
Yes, we have.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Seckham. Any member? I actually am going to propose a motion to full council. I have sent this to Kelly previously and said I may or may not put forward this motion depending upon what was said this evening. Can I ask that that is shared, please, Kelly? The motion I wish to put to full council is that council notes that Warwickshire County Council Cabinet has voted to submit plans to government for a single Warwickshire unitary authority. Council expresses regret that Warwickshire County Council has decided to do so without regard for the views of districts. Council does not understand the rush, given the government white paper on devolution is not yet published. This council resolves to call on the County Council full council to withdraw the proposals and begin a full, open and transparent discussion on the future of local government with all stakeholders, including district councils, once the white paper is published. In light of the County Council's plan, Council believes the status quo has now been put at risk, and if local government reform is to happen, then a solution that best protects the interests of our residents should be developed. Council therefore resolves to continue to work with the district and boroughs in Warwickshire to explore all the options available with a view to submitting detailed plans to government once the options appraisal and public consultation has been completed. And Chair, in doing that, I think the very last line, the public consultation, is absolutely vital in this matter. And I frankly can't support anything before we have done consultation with the public. Is there a seconder for that motion that I propose goes to full council?
Seconded, Chair.
Chair.
Thank you. Any member? Councillor Lloyd.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think the motion actually covers everything. I can't see why there is an absolute rush to go forward with the county's option of one unitary over the whole of the county. I don't think it's right that any political party at this stage should make a decision on what is best for its residents until it's consulted those residents and until at least all the districts and boroughs within Warwickshire have been consulted, which clearly did not happen with the county council. I'm quite honest, I sat and listened to the county meeting, and I listened to it very, very carefully, and it astounded me that 2 Nuneaton County councillors actually voted in favour of it, with no consultation, no regard to the people that they represent within Nuneaton, and no regard to the district or the borough of Nuneaton and Bedworth. I think it's astounding that we find ourselves in permission, and to hear the leader of the county council now say we need to be all together. It sounds to me very much we need to be all together as long as you're going along the way I want you to go along. It's, you know, at the end of the day, I think, you know, somebody's left the gate open and the horse is bolted. You know, it's been one mad rush to push this through, and there shouldn't be a rush. It's a terrible position to be in, because it would be nicer that we all sat down as districts, boroughs and county and had the same piece of work done on all the options, and then come to a conclusion once we've done public consultation. That hasn't happened. So I cannot at this stage, without seeing all the evidence and seeing the report that we've commissioned and spoke to the people of Nuneaton and Bedworth in our case, until we've done all that, I can't possibly put my hand on heart and go with any of these options. We need to look at all the options. And you're quite right, Madam Chair. It does seem that because we've gone down this route, the status quo or any abbreviation of that status quo, any hybrid of it, has been put at risk because of the county council. People should quite rightly be annoyed that they're being run roughshod over by the county council and by their county council two county council representatives, Conservative county council representatives in Nuneaton, who haven't spoke to the public about this issue. I think it's disgraceful. I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. Kelly, can I ask that you put the screen back to normal? We will obviously, that motion, if approved this evening, will appear on a full council agenda for people to see. It's easier to see who's actually in the meeting without the screen being shared. Thank you. Are there any other comments on this? I'm not hearing any others. I think it's vitally important that we do not rush into any decisions about future of local government, which will have generational implications. These are decisions that will affect my children and one day I hope grandchildren for many years to come. And it is right that we take our time, that we gather the evidence, and most importantly, we consult the good people of Nuneaton and Bedworth about what is their preferred option. So I have no hesitancy at all in asking that Warwickshire County Council actually slow down their rush and actually take the time to look at all of the evidence that is emerging, and most importantly to listen to the people of Nuneaton and Bedworth. I have moved that motion. It has been seconded. I don't have any other speakers. Is Cabinet in agreement with that being put to full council for consideration as an urgent item in light of the timescales involved? I'm not seeing any dissent, so that motion then is approved and will go to full council. Thank you, and can I thank our speakers as well on that item. Moving then to our next item, item 20, is to move the exclusion of the public and press under the relevant Local Government Act I'm prepared to do that. Is that seconded?
Seconded, Chair.
Thank you very much. In that case, then, can I ask our IT colleagues to cease the live streaming of the meeting, please?